Hi, my name is Cybervesna and today I'm gonna walk you through adding custom props into Cyberpunk 2077. I covered setting up modding tools in my previous tutorial video about importing clothes, so if you don't know how to do it, please check that video. What you will need additionally to Blender and Wolvenkit is Visual Studio Code that we will use to edit Lua files. Link will be listed down below in the description. If you are interested in understanding in-depth process, the whole custom props section tutorial is listed on RedModding Wiki and link will be listed down below in the description. This modding guide also lists websites where you can get models to import into prop. What we need from here is going down below and here setting up the project, and what interests me the most is downloading the IMM prop template from Nexus. Here's our modding resource. We go to files, click manual download. I already downloaded it, as you can see, so let's begin. I already created a new project in Wolvenkit. It's empty, so we need to get our base template. Since it's source, we will also have to match it to the source here. Open a new window. As you can see, source is here, so we go one up, a copy, and we paste. And as you can see, it added me a whole structure that we can modify to our needs. First thing I like to do is to change the basic structure of the tutorial to my personal one. So I'm renaming this to my own stuff and I move it to the archive and I delete the rest of the tutorial since I don't need it anymore. Now it's in my personal file structures. It's unique already to not be conflicting with other mods. Since I released previous packs, I like to have my Luas in one space, so I add here my custom folder. This way, if someone has more of my packs, they will be all listed in this folder instead of being in the main custom props folder. I will also rename the Lua file to my custom one, and as we're gonna edit each of those files, we're gonna rename them as well. As you can see, the template also has options for template multi-layered, which is basically a texture setup with the multi-layer setup from Cyberpunk 2077, or template textures, which is used commonly outsourced assets with PBR textures. This is the one I'm gonna use, so I'm gonna delete multi-layered and I'm gonna delete multi-layer setups. This is not a necessary step, but if you have meshes that have the same name and need to be renamed something different, the best option is to get bulk rename utility. It's a free app that will rename your files and I will demonstrate it. You need your path to your folder. When you open bulk rename utility, it might look scary, but don't worry. You just have to paste your path here and select files you want to rename, and here in the replace section it does exactly that. We're gonna replace template with, and if you click rename, okay, and now all files are renamed. I actually renamed them again because I made a mistake and I don't want to import cake but a bouquet of flowers, so I rename it to bouquet. But basically I did exactly the same thing in the bulk rename utility. Before we move into Blender, I'm gonna export this template mesh, tools, export, refresh, and my wedding bouquet. And this is gonna be our template in Blender. In Blender, I'm gonna import our template file and I'm using Cyberpunk plugin to do this. Like I said, I mentioned how to set everything up in Blender in my previous video, so go check that out if you don't know how. And here's our little template cube. I already have my mesh saved that I want to import. It's a mesh I got from Sketchfab and it's in GLB format. As you can see, it's separated into different parts, and we're gonna use that to make them a different submesh, because if we turn on statistics, we can see that the whole mesh is pretty high poly, which we don't want. I choose a pretty bad mesh as a first example because I need to join all of these submeshes to create something that can be manageable for Cyberpunk structure. So now I'm just gonna unwrap them all. The limit is 65k, so I'm gonna put them into groups. I'm gonna check the limit when I reach 55, 60 can be, and now I join them. So this is our first submesh of flowers. I'm gonna delete this, and now I check the sub count and I add even more. 65, it's too much. I'm gonna check it. This one will be 59k. I joined them. This is our second petal group. Deleting these. Just 1, 2. This is gonna be our third. I'm gonna do the same thing with the rest of things, and basically if you have a mesh like that, you just have to do that stuff and make sure that the count doesn't cross 65k vertices. So I will get back to you when I join all those submeshes into separate groups. That will be easier. Now I have it cleaned up and it's in separate meshes that gonna be our submeshes in the final mesh. I will need 8 submeshes, so I will use this cube to make 8 submeshes. Now I'm gonna hide our bouquet. Now we go to edit mode, and I'm gonna to select the part, I press L and then P, separate by selection, and again L, separate by selection, L, separate by selection, by selection, by selection, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need one more, so I will just go here. In edit mode, I will go to wire view, which is Shift plus Z, and I will select one part and I will separate by selection, and now we have 8 submeshes. So I'm gonna rename them all now in object mode, and going back to normal view, it's Shift Z, or you can press it here. So this is gonna be submesh 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 0 is our 8th. In case we might lose UVs, I will make a copy of all the meshes that we're gonna use. Ctrl-C to copy, and I will make new collection, call it UV, and it's Ctrl to paste. And here are our groups that we can use later for the UV. I hide the UVs for now because we don't need them, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all the submeshes from our cube, A, to select everything, and I'm gonna move them here. Go back to object mode, and now I'm gonna use each of our submeshes and join them with the submesh from our template mesh. I made one mesh not enough, so I'm just gonna select the last submesh, and I'm gonna just select 3 of these. It selected the face, it didn't include little flowers that I already have here, and I'm gonna again separate by selection, and now I have the final submesh, which is 8, and I can go back to object mode and join them here. So now we have all in a submesh. We still have the cube, so to delete the cube, we're just gonna select all the submeshes, go to edit mode, wireframe, again select everything and vertices, and this way we have our submesh. Now we can check if our submeshes have the UVs. which looks like they do have them, and we don't need to copy UVs. If you have an issue and you need to copy UVs, because sometimes during the joining the mesh will lose the UV from the original mesh, that's why I always copy for UVs. If you have that problem, go back to my import clouds video. There is a section about transferring UVs. If you have a situation like I do, which is if I go to UV editing, and you can see that I got UVs for different maps. Basically, what I'm gonna do is that I will just make a solid color anyway, so I'm not bothered by it because it will be one solid color. However, when you're gonna split your meshes, you're gonna need to be careful with the UVs, because you need to have the same groups of the same UVs that use the same image in separate groups. You can have them like I do here, because now I won't be able to like link them to separate images that they have. What I mean is that all the same UV maps that are on that belong to the same image need to be on the same submesh. So if your submeshes correspond to each UV map and you have everything ready, we can export it to Wolvenkit, because for the props we don't need weights. And we have to export as static prop. Now in Wolvenkit, I will actually move to my preferred layout, and in tools import it's successfully imported. Since I need a bit more textures, I'm gonna open here and I'm just gonna copy and paste. I don't actually have normal maps, so I won't need this, so I'm gonna delete this, and I'm gonna use rebulk rename utility to rename. Now I export all my textures, and since for some I'm gonna use custom meshes, I'm just gonna copy the ones that I want to use, which is this one. I need one more, it looks like. And now I will copy, paste the ribbon. If your model didn't come with separate textures in a separate file, like a folder file with the PNG textures or whatever, like in my case, they were integrated into JBL, so we can extract them in Blender. If we go to shading tab, and in shading tab, this is not the one we're using, it's probably one of the petals one, whatever. And here we go and we have to unpack item in the base color. And I use file from current directory, create when necessary, and this way it created me petal texture file in the folder where I have the bouquet flower. And for the rest, I will make my custom colors just in Photoshop, and I will be right back. Now that I have all my textures, I can import them. As you can see, I also added a white variant because I want to have options with petal colors. So I'm just gonna again. So now we can close export and tools import, refresh, and we're gonna select all our textures, and all of them are now here. Now we can move into editing our mesh, and in the inside you can see it has one appearance, which is default. And here are we don't need material setup, so I'm just gonna delete this, and in material entries I'm gonna change those. This is gonna be petals red, this will be petals white. To add new material entry, you have to click on the material entry, and here the plus, it will add you new entry, and now since this corresponds to 1, this will correspond to 2, is local instance and name gonna be them. And I repeat the process. Now that we have all materials, we can save our mesh. And now if we duplicate, because we already have here the structure, actually I don't have a normal, so I'm gonna delete those two. Just base color, and I'm gonna duplicate until I have all my entries. This is what's gonna define the appearance of our mesh. So I have there 8 submeshes, so I'm gonna duplicate this as well until I get 8 submeshes. Oh, it's 9, but 8 is the final numeration. And I'm gonna rename this to flowers. Okay, now we can mesh preview and see which submesh is what. First 3 submeshes are flowers, so I'm gonna go back to petals red, copy and paste. Now 3 is stem, so mesh 3 is stem, and the rest is small flowers. I have one less submesh. I'm sorry, I literally can't count in this tutorial. Now, since I have this set up, I can duplicate the appearance, duplicate, and do flowers white instead, and change petals red to petals white. Now we need to path our materials, which in this case is here, base color, and this is red, so I'm gonna take my petals and copy relative path to the game file and paste it. The same for white. Now our mesh is ready. Now what we have to do is to set app file and end file. In the app file, we don't need multi-layered again, so we're gonna just delete this. In the app, we're gonna edit first slot, mesh, depot path, and in this case, it's our bouquet. And we're gonna set appearance to red flowers. And in the app file, we're gonna edit this to flowers red, and we're gonna duplicate and change it to flowers white. And here we're gonna change again white. Now we move to the end file, and in the end file again we can delete this because we don't need this in this case, and we're gonna link here our bouquet. And we're gonna name this our mesh appearance, which is flowers red, and rename default appearance as well. Since we have 2 variants of our flowers, which is flowers red and flowers white, I'm gonna duplicate this appearance and I'm gonna rename it to white. And here, since we also have them named like so in our mesh, just gonna copy. Here is white and here is red. Mind you, this is why we have app file in the variant option, because app file is responsible for managing appearances that are in the mesh. However, if you would have no variant options, you would just need to edit end file, and if you follow the no variant option, then there's gonna be only one file to edit, which is the end file. Now that we have everything edited from the main files, we can move into editing Lua file. For this, we will need Visual Studio Code that I mentioned earlier. We just open our file, and basically here we just go and change. This is Vesna, unique unifier. I'm gonna go, and tutorial item. This is gonna be wedding kit. wedding bouquet, and path. Here we adding path to our end file, which is here. And mind you, you need to add slashes. The slashes needs to be double in Lua. And here need to be our appearances, which is flowers red and flowers white. And this part of the code is if you wouldn't had the variant option, but I'm not using it, so I'm just gonna delete this. And this is our ready. Oh, here it needs to be small letters. So this is our Lua. Now with the Lua edited and saved, we can install and launch and try how it looks in game. Now in game we can go to AMM, decor, wedding. Here's wedding bouquet, and as you can see it shows in game, and here I can choose the appearances. So this is how adding custom prompts into Cyberpunk 2077 works. If you have any questions, you can find me on the RedModding server. If you are interested on the projects that I actually created and published, I will link below my Nexus and my other profiles. And have a great modding, chums!